Yo, welcome to this video. This is the first video for this year's Sinquefield Cup. This is the third edition. First one, was in 2013, and it's been growing. Now a 10-player event, and it's part of this new, how is it called, Grand Chess Tour, the second tournament in this series of events. Yeah, we know that in the first event in Norway, Topalov won, a bit surprisingly, and Carlsen had a very bad result. It was quite surprising to see. I think he lost 3 games, if I'm not mistaken, and it really was a bad event for him. So this is the second part of this chess tour, and if Carlsen wants to do something, he really has to win it. I mean, everything else is kind of unacceptable. So this game in the very first round, Carlsen with white against Topalov, was exceptionally important for the overall scheme of things. If this game has a winner, it will be quite telling what might happen in this event. So I'm going to concentrate on that game and don't look at the other games. I'm going to do game of the day and do really just one game. I can give you some brief information about the other games, but I won't look at any moves and rather do this game a little bit more thoroughly. It was difficult, by the way, to choose, but I went for this game ultimately because of the purely, let's say, sporting importance. It's just so important because of the 2 players, the world champion and the guy leading the overall event. So let's see. Carlsen went with 1e4, as he does in his majority of games, which, to be perfectly honest, I never really quite got, because I always thought that he's better off with d4, c4, knight f3. But okay, that's just my personal take on things. I'm not his coach. So c5, knight f3, d6. Not that he's scoring badly with e4. It's just that I always felt when he has something else on, I don't know, it felt better to me. I don't know. Okay, he plays bishop b5 check. That's his usual line. He doesn't play the open Sicilian much these days. He does, but not a lot. This check has served him very well over the years. Topalov goes for knight d7. That is the sharpest move, probably. Bishop d7 is the prescribed main line, after which white normally takes and sets up a Maroczy bind, which is very solid for black, but also somewhat unexciting. If you keep in mind this is not very exciting, and keep in mind what we get in the game, and then you see why Topalov plays knight d7. It's just the far more fighting move, and this is this is the spirit that he usually arrives at the board. He wants to get a fighting position even with black. Yeah, Carlsen plays castles. The drawback of knight d7, by the way, is that it somewhat hampers black's development. Yeah, as we see, the bishop cannot come out. So bishop b7 is a somewhat more fluent move. It's a bit easier to play, and here you really get something unique quite quickly, especially in this game. So castles, knight to f6, attacks that e4 pawn, rook e1, and now went a6. Yeah, that's an interesting moment. Carlsen now plays the somewhat unconventional looking move, bishop to d3. You would expect white to go back to f1, but bishop b3 has an idea. What white wants to do is he wants to ultimately set up this typical classical center with c3 and d4, and the question is where to put the bishop. And you can go to f1 instead of bishop d3 and do that, or as Carlsen did, to d3 in order to later put it on c2. Yeah, so let's just assume black wouldn't do something specific, what he does in the game, but let's just say he would play something slowish. Then white's idea is something like that. Yeah, to get that full center and have the bishop on c2, not on f1. Yeah, here you can sometimes go to b3, or maybe use it like after e5 to go to e4. Yeah, it's a little bit more active there, maybe in comparison to f1. So that is the idea. Drawback is it is rather slow. Bishop on d3. And Topalov does something about it very quickly. He goes with b5, and he took a moment for that decision. Not probably because he didn't probably think about this over the board, but he did just trying to recollect his preparation. Um, Although he could expect this to happen, those first couple of moves, because this particular position had been reached before in games, and also in a game by the world champion, by Magnus Carlsen. He now played c4 as he did in 14, I'm sorry, in a game against Hikaru Nakamura, funny enough. So there has been an example game that Topalov could base his preparation on. Carlsen had that on the board before. In the game back then, Nakamura played knight e5. Interesting choice, based on the fact that after the capture, that bishop here is hanging. It's a bit strange, the setup, but black definitely here has a good position. White probably does not want to take. Carlsen actually played bishop back to f1. That wasn't a bad position for black, but Topalov now came up with something really outrageous. He played the move g5. That's a funny move, right? Would be very low on my list of moves to consider. I mean, probably I wouldn't consider it at all unless I probably would have done the same as what Topalov did before that game, looking at the computer, because engines give that move as one of the top choices. It looks very, very strange, I have to admit, but well, it is very modern chess, and you look at the moves really one by one, move by move. Does it work? Does it not? And it looks strange, but it has got some ideas and some justifications. We will see. Carlsen actually takes that pawn, but sometimes when the other side is playing such a somewhat weird move, ignoring the center, pushing a flank pawn, you sometimes think, okay, wait, I'm just going to ignore that, right? I'm not going to play along with his ideas. I just develop things. The thing is, that is not so easy in this position. If you just say, let's say you want to ignore that whole thing, and you play, let's say, knight c3 to some developing move, then he goes g4. And this is rather weird, because the knight has absolutely no good square. E1 is blocked by the rook. d2, there's still a pawn, as white has that somewhat weird piece configuration, bishop on d3 in front of the pawn. That is, as I said, it's a bit slow. You put the bishop on that unnatural square, that anticipating that you will move the c pawn, move the bishop again, then move the pawn on d2. It's slow. And here white has no square. You probably have to go to something like this. And then knight e5 makes lots of sense all of a sudden. That pawn here is now very safely protected, and the knight on e5 has a strong position in the middle of the board. After something like that retreat, black will take. And this is really crazy. Those two pawns, they do an excellent job of securing that knight. And knight in h4 is just looking very silly. That is just not a good position for white. I mean, knight c3 is not a particularly great move. I'm just showing that white is, he has to do something. He cannot just ignore black's ideas. He took on g5. I think this is right. An important thing to consider is, if you check the time here, the time is correct. It is just off by a couple of seconds. Carlsen took 30 minutes for that move. And this is quite interesting, because as we already have learned, he had the position before g5 already on the board. So this position he already had against Nakamura, and g5 is one of the engine's top suggestions. It's not something that no computer just come up with. If you analyze this position with an engine, you will see the move, that it is there, let's say, in the position. And I don't know, maybe I'm having wrong expectations there, but I think if he's kind of after the game that he played against Nakamura, or even before that, you probably should check what's going on. And if that move is popping up, I don't know, I would probably feel inclined to check it, because it looks very weird and difficult to face over the board. I wouldn't expect that move to be there, let's say, and if the computer tells me it is there, it is existing, it is something serious, then probably it makes sense to to study it a bit. But it doesn't seem to be the case. He really seemed to be genuinely surprised by it. Okay, it happened, g5. And what did Carlsen play? He took it, as I said, after 30 minutes. Topalov plays knight e5. That is 1 point. You now have the e5 square for the knight temporarily. You attack that bishop. So bishop went back. By the way, instead of knight g5, there also was the move c takes b5, which is leading to somewhat crazy complications. But I understand why knight g5 was chosen. It's a little bit easier to contemplate in comparison. This is also crazy. G4, e5 takes knight g5 is some line that the computer is giving, and here, I mean, this looks like complete craziness. It's a very, very I guess, unsettling feeling if someone springs g5 upon you, and you have to work it out over the board, knowing that the other side will have checked that with engines beforehand. Okay, knight e5, bishop e2, bishop f1 was also possible, but bishop e2 certainly makes some sense, and now black captured. Very interesting position, very unconventional. The pawn on c4 is quite a funny fellow here for black. It makes sure that there is some control here, that d4 is not happening easily, and therefore securing that knight. White now has a couple of interesting options. What Carlsen played is interesting, but maybe not the best move. He went knight a3. That has some logic, of course. White wants to take on c4 with the knight. Very sensible looking move. There were some alternatives, as I mentioned. Something that comes to mind is to take on c4, using knight c4, queen a4. However, if you look at this, knight takes, queen a4, check. Knight d7 takes, and knight e5 again, you see that this probably didn't lead to much. Queen maybe to c3, not quite sure, and rook g8. And as weird as it looks, black seems to have a good position. Bishop g7 is coming. He's got two bishops, and well, it looks a bit crummy, black's position. But what about white's? That's also weird. That is all back here. It hasn't developed. The queen is out somewhere. It's just it's rather weird, but black has some things going for him. This bishop will be very strong on g7, and d4 is a potentially very strong outpost for your knight. Knight c6, knight d4, for example. So bishop c4 wasn't a good idea, but I think what is a good idea is knight f3. This is probably a rather strong move. While preparing for this video, I came across some brief analysis here by Alejandro Ramirez, the American grandmaster, and he recommended that move. I checked it a little bit myself, and it seems to be pretty good, actually. It has some logic. e5 is it's the strongest piece that black has, so we're going to try to get rid of that. And something like knight f3, check. Bishop f3 already feels uncomfortable. White has untangled a little bit here, and he has he either will pick up this pawn or will play d3 to get full development. And all in all, this feels like a huge gain for white. e5 is a threat as well. So this is probably the more interesting move. Takes, and now e5 is interesting. White opens up the position, and after all, he is a bit better developed. Black only has that knight out. This feels like a very, very interesting and sharp position, which probably is favoring white a little bit. We don't know what Topalov had in store, but that would have been probably the critical test of the whole thing. However, it is an interesting gamble. If g5 is the move that really will shock your opponent if you have not ever seen it. And it probably is exactly what happened. Carlsen didn't know of the move and had to figure it out over the board. And then it's difficult to hit upon those critical continuations. How does this continue? One thing that is not working is this.
Check.
Nice little line. This is hanging. As usual, combinations are possible if there's some kind of disturbance of harmony in the opponent's position, and here there are pins going on and unprotected pieces. Black probably, I mean, he can probably take, but he has to do something else now. Maybe move the queen, or here move the knight in the first place. It is a very dangerous initiative, really is. White's development advantage is quite serious. Yeah, as I said, Carlsen didn't go for that. He went knight a3. He probably had the coming continuation in mind. Rook g8, attacking that knight. It is really unprotected on g5 because the d pawn is still back home. Yeah, what did Carlsen do? He ignored it, interestingly enough. He played knight takes c4. That was probably his idea, yeah? Sacrificing a piece, again after a long think. There were alternatives. You did not need to sacrifice yet. The engines give the move d3, which is, well, probably not what you have dreamed of in the first place, but it is okay. It is really okay. Black will take, I guess, and bishop takes. And, well, this is equal material, right? This is, we don't have to sacrifice a piece or anything. It's equal material, and Black's position is still not easy to handle with the king in the middle. And I don't know, I think White is perfectly okay here. The computer gives something like this, h6, driving the knight back, and then it wants to take and play d5. Yeah, and I think White is totally okay here. Why is something is it bad, you know? I don't really think so. I think White can play that position without any huge problem. Even the end game, when Black has got two bishops, seems fairly okay to me. I mean, White's pawn structure is basically perfect, and Black has 4 pawn islands, so I mean that should be at least equal for White. I mean, okay, at least equal. It's okay, right? White will not be better here, because, well, the bishop pair is such a big asset in that open position that it's probably equaling. It's probably equalish, because Black, because of the pawns, will probably lose some pawn at some point, and he will have great compensation with his bishops. That's the most likely scenario that's going to happen later. But it's okay for White. There's nothing wrong with it. I think maybe one issue was that that Carlsen definitely wanted to win that game, and he probably underestimated something that that he calculated. You also have to see the overall standings of the event, with Carlsen wanting to catch up, and the history between the two players. In the first leg of that Grand Chess Tour, Carlsen lost the first round game against Topalov out of a completely winning position because he wasn't aware of the somewhat weird time control. A very strange incident that was, of course, yeah, I mean, you probably heard of it or read about it. So this is also an interesting little fact there, that maybe this also provoked him, let's say, to play that in that sharp way. But it's, I mean, those psychological things are interesting, but he probably just didn't see something right. Yeah, he had some kind of misevaluation, because it's really not working great. Okay, he took on c4. Black took that, and okay, don't forget that knight is hanging. Taking on g5 isn't a good idea because of d4. Yeah, that's a double attack in essence, so not great. Yeah, takes here, and yeah, now the problem is White cannot just recapture. I mean, okay, if he does, then here there's really no compensation for the piece, absolutely nothing. So d4, that was his idea. So covering this, attacking this. So Black has to react to this and has to probably move the knight. There are no great alternatives. Knight b6 looks very logical, and now bishop h5. This was probably Carlsen's idea, and somewhere around here he probably has miscalculated, misjudged something. By the way, the engine or the engines, I looked at this with multiple, they suggest this continuation.
Check.
And only give White only give Black a very small plus, like 0.4 or something. which I find pretty surprising. I mean, I understand that black's pawn structure is bad, but white only has 2 pawns. And I think with excellent technical play, black should win this, and probably will win this. I'm a bit surprised about the engine's evaluation here. And this is also something that white definitely does not want to play, because you know that you're completely playing for 2 results, and the win is not one of them. And from that 2 results, the loss is the most likely. So this is you don't go into an endgame a piece down. Yeah, so it's very understandable that he. Why am I not? Well, this is not reacting. Let me check. Oh no, it does. Okay. So he didn't do that. He played bishop h5. Black has to take, of course. It was hanging. Queen takes, threatening that crushing check on f7. Black has to play rook g6 or rook g7. I think actually that rook g6, which was not played by Topalov, might have been a little bit stronger, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a huge difference. Rook g6, as I said, maybe a bit stronger. One line that that comes to mind here is queen h7, rook g7, queen h8, and now the capture on d4. Yeah, now it is difficult to suggest something better than knight h7, getting some material back. White really doesn't have any particularly great idea. Yeah, I mean, what other move? If you play something, there's even knight c4 coming. Yeah, you're really out of moves, basically. Yeah, okay, you have to get something back. Yeah, now black would just give the exchange back, and now play like either the knight over to the king side or even play e5. This is an excellent position for black. Yeah, we have to check the material. 5 pawns for black, 6 for white. So white has got rook and 1 pawn against 2 minor pieces. This is quite often not so bad for the rook, but in this particular case, I think black is much better, because his strong pawns in the center. He has very good positions for his pieces, especially bishop on e6 will be very nicely anchored. Black has 2 bishops, and which is very important, part of white's pawns are these here, and you cannot just push them forward in front of your king. So very often the big deciding factor in that rook and pawns against minor pieces is what are the pawns doing. If they get into motion and get running, then quite often rook and pawn is pretty good. But here this is not the case. Black is also active and will get more active. Bishop e6, rook c8, knight d7, knight c5, those kind of ideas. That really is great for black. So this was maybe a line that could have happened after rook g6, and probably also a clearer way of showing that Carlsen's piece sacrifice was not really working. Topalov played rook g7, however, and clearly he's now thinking. Yeah, he's taking time. Knight h7. It's difficult to suggest anything else. You have to get something back. So it takes. And now Topalov played a rather strange move, I think. It's not the most natural move that comes to mind. The easiest solution here was to take on h7, just to give that back, or give it back, no, give something back, let's say, and take here. That looks like a pretty good position, which is actually quite similar to the one that we have seen before. Yeah, it's a very comparable structure. And the other line that was coming from rook g6, black was a tempo up and had e5 in already. Here it is white's move. I think black is better here as well. It's not. I mean, tempi are important here, but still the long-term factors are pretty significant. I think black has a pretty sizable advantage here, but he didn't do that. He played the move, as I said, queen to d7. By the way, bishop g4 is also was interesting to check, but let's look at what happened. Queen d7. It seems, by the way, that after queen d7, Carlsen now had an opportunity to get a somewhat decent game again. Difficult to play still, but he had a good continuation. He took on c5, which is right. Black recaptured. And now I think he should have played knight f8, the most obvious move. The thing is, he probably saw that this is okay for him, but he probably misjudged the continuation that he played. Because here, well, what should black do? The idea obviously was to play queen h3 here. Yeah, black cannot capture. This is
Check.
a funny
Check.
way to
Checkmate.
lose the game very quickly. It's completely forced mate. So he would have played this and threatening mate on g2. So nothing else. White has to take. Bishop takes g3. And a very strange position now. If black takes on f8, bishop h6 actually leads to something where I'd rather be white. Yeah, this is now rook and 2 pawns were these 2 minor pieces, and the minor pieces are not very well coordinated at the moment. Yeah, knight on b6, doesn't really, I mean, the knight is not on d4, let's say. Yeah, that would be an entirely different story. Besides, knight d4 would have forks on f3 and so on, but just the knight doesn't have a great square. And here black is in trouble, definitely. And this is rather good for white. So black will probably not take that knight, but play something else. And then we have a situation where white is 2 pawns up for the moment, but that knight is trapped. Yeah, it cannot get out. It doesn't get anywhere anytime soon. So, totally strange position. And yeah, I don't know. I think the only reason why Carlsen might have avoided it, because he definitely saw that, I mean, it's a pretty simple line, is that he probably thought that his move was stronger, which is not the case. In fact, this seems to be losing. But that's the only explanation. Sometimes it's not that they, if they make a mistake, it's not that they don't see the other line. I mean, knight f8 is the most normal move ever. So it's, of course, Carlsen has seen that, but he probably thought that e5 would be stronger, and he has misjudged something here. I did not. The broadcast was I watched the broadcast up till the end of the games, and I'm not sure if they had any statements afterwards, so I cannot really tell what Carlsen said, if he had a statement, but yeah, I wanted to go to bed at some time. This is also why this video is coming relatively late. It's a bit of an unlucky time for that event. It's the games normally end at midnight German time, and well, sometime I might manage to make a video right after that and release it, but in most cases I will do it in the morning on the following day, like now. So e5, what now? Queen c6, that's pretty obvious, right? That this is not what Carlsen could have missed. Threatening mate, you never miss these kind of moves. Yeah, and now it's already not so clear what you want to do. Yeah, knight f6, this is a flashy looking move, intending to go for this with unclear consequences. Maybe white is even better, but it's unimportant. Black has king d8, and this is leading nowhere. Yeah, you can give a check if you like, and black will escape. He's just running. Yeah, and ultimately this is hanging, and there's mate on g2. It's a rather simple win even. So knight f6 is not working at all. He actually went with f3. Bishop g5 is a move that the computer points out, but that is ultimately also not going to lead to much. Black can even consider just to go back and make himself ready to take on f8 with the rook. Yeah, if white decides to take on f8. Yeah, that's also not great. So f3 was played at the end. Queen g6, a strong move. Again, mate and the queen. And I really don't know. What did Carlsen overlook here? I don't know. He went knight f6.
Check.
And king d8. Yeah, maybe he really didn't really consider king d8. I don't know. I really don't know. If black takes, and we should check it.
Check.
Then again, this continuation is not clear at all. Absolutely not. But king d8 is just saying, okay, check. I move the king. Your queen is kind of attacked here. You cannot move your knight because of that. And if you have to trade queens, I'm a piece up. And this is what happened. Yeah, white now has to trade on g6. There is simply no other move. Rook takes, knight back, and now we got an endgame with black being a piece up for 2 pawns. It is still not a super trivial task. I mean, I can easily see myself, I don't know, screwing this up, yeah, with some stupid moves, but with good technical play and precise calculation, it should be a win for black. And Topalov does a good job here. We shouldn't forget that here they both didn't have that much time. 11 minutes for Carlsen, 17 or about 18 here for Topalov. Bishop b7 is a good active move, not defending passively here that pawn. White cannot take anyway because of bishop f3. So h4, trying to use that pawns. Rook c8, covering c5, h5, and went back. Okay, bishop d2, knight c4, bishop c3. A funny line that you can, that might happen if black is completely blind. Is this rook d1, yeah, knight b2 with about a million question marks.
Check.
Bishop a5 check. King a8, knight
Check.
f6 check. That's funny, right? Takes,
Check.
takes. Bishop e7, only move rook e7.
Check.
And rook d7. And white quite clearly is winning. Yeah, maybe if you give the comp enough time, it would probably show a checkmate. Yeah, but okay, that's completely unnecessary. After a rook d1, of course, black will just take that bishop. Rook
Check.
takes, and then here. Yeah, again, if knight c5, there's bishop f3, and black is crashing through. Yeah, bishop c3 was played, bishop h6, activating that bishop, very nicely played.
Check.
Rook d1, yeah, and the only interesting little point is coming up. Black is now activating this bishop there to b5, lining up on that diagonal. Many rooks there. Okay, rook d1, back. Yeah, and now Carlsen played knight f2, which is a mistake, but it is really not that important anymore because, well, time was down to 1 minute something, and, well, the position was lost, and it doesn't alter the whole thing very much. Bishop e5 is a nice little shot here by Topalov, exposing that bishop. So if, what did he play actually? Knight g4, yeah, okay. After bishop e5, there's bishop f3, and those are lined up very nicely. So a win, rook de1, rook g2 check, king f1, and now the funny point, rook g5. Hangs, everything hangs. It's really funny. Black is completely winning here. As this was played, takes here, and king f8. And now black has just one additional pawn in the process. White now is just 1 pawn for a piece, and I think under normal circumstances he would resign. But Carlsen, as you see here, he had just seconds. They play without. Do they play without increment? I think they do, right? Looks like it. I didn't check actually what the time control is, but he was simply very short on time and was just blitzing out some stuff, and then resigned, as it sometimes happens. You really, as you say, you don't have. I didn't have time to resign, let's say. Yeah, what to take from this game? Very important win, obviously, for Topalov, who starts with a win with the black pieces against the world champion, and Carlsen still seems to be a little bit off after his performance in Norway chess about it's about 2 months ago, right? Yeah, about 2 months ago. Yeah, things that surprised me a little bit was that he didn't know of the move g5. I don't know, maybe it's a wrong idea that I have there, but I was thinking if you recheck, or if you do a post-game analysis, let's say, of your games, like he certainly does, I thought then it would have popped up, and it's easily imaginable that the thing is, the top GMs, they look for those kind of moves, those weird looking moves that are kind of unconventional, but they are playable, and they can check it before the game with computers, so that they can spring a surprise, and they have superior knowledge in that very, very limited area, yeah, where they have the information advantage. And this is why I was thinking that when you do this after the game against Nakamura, if you do a post-game check and this move pops up, that you would check it a little bit and see what the best continuation is. But it obviously didn't happen. Yeah, and then we came to this situation where Carlsen was going for that piece sacrifice that ultimately does not seem to work. However, he got a second chance here by Topalov when he played Queen d7, after which knight f8 seems to have led to immensely unclear consequences. That weird endgame that we have seen. Sorry, it's first the capture. That strange game where black is probably not taking that knight. And I have no idea how to assess that. The engines give equal, which is completely useless. Yeah, it's just an immensely unconventional position. But he didn't take that opportunity, which this is really surprising me that he was surprised in the opening. Okay, this can happen, and it happened before. And to everybody, yeah, it's nothing out of the ordinary. But that he did not go for that, but went for sorry, that was the wrong button. Went for that e5 move, and this is really not working at all. I mean, completely not. That is surprising, and as I said, I don't know what exactly he missed. It must be some kind of miscalculation. It's a purely calculation heavy position. It's not something where long-term judgment plays a role, which is certainly favoring Topalov in that setup, because if they get some long-term planning game, Carlsen will probably win almost all of them, as it happened before. He has a fantastic score against Topalov, especially if it is that kind of slowish maneuvering game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the coverage of that game. I'm going to briefly give you a summary of the other games, what happened. So they were all games were decisive. So Nakamura beat Anand in a nice game. Anand basically made a huge mistake when time was ticking down a little bit. But a good game by Nakamura. Yeah, really had some pressure, was poking around a little bit, and won a deserved game. Very nice victory for American number one. Then Levon Aronian had white against Caruana and won a very, very nice game that I also could have covered. That was the second game that I seriously considered to cover, but because of the, as I said, general sporting importance, I went for Carlsen Topalov. Very interesting game. Caruana played in a very sharp way out of a Queen's Gambit declined with black, which you don't see that often. But Aronian played a very imaginative, nice attack and won in good style. I really hope that he gets back to his former self. Yeah, he really is such a great player, and it was bad or awful to see him struggling in recent events. So maybe he's getting back to good shape. Then Giri won a nice game against Grishuk, where Grishuk had problems for a while already, and then time trouble was totally killing him. So a very good win by Giri. And then we had Wesley So playing white against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Wesley So is the organizer's pick in that event. He's not a regular on the chess tour, and mostly because the chess tour was compiled when So's rating was still a little bit lower. Anyway, in that game, Wesley So, funny enough, he played a very early pawn grab that is known to be questionable from very old games. Yeah, one game by Karpov, actually from the 70s, and he had nothing to show. I mean, no improvement, nothing. And Vachier-Lagrave had a great compensation and won a nice game. So it was a bit mysterious what happened there. Maybe Wesley so really didn't know that game Tartai with White versus Karpov from 1970 something. The thing is, when I saw that game and I didn't have any commentary, it struck me like, I kind of know that, but I couldn't really piece it together that it was Tartai Karpov. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I'll be covering the next rounds as well. One round actually I'm covering completely live move by move for the ICC. If you're an ICC member, I'll be doing a live stream on Thursday just for the members. Yeah, you cannot watch free on Twitch. You have to join ICC to do that. Okay, well, thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with the second round. Bye.